Have you ever been told that you talk too much? Maybe you're too loud. I know I did growing up in middle school. I was actually voted loudest in my class. And using my voice is how I met my guest today, Twila Dang.
Hello.
And we met in a very interesting way. We met doing a radio show at myTalk 107.1. We were put together. It was called Twila and Natalie, and we did it on the weekends. What came after that is what's more interesting to me and what we're really going to dig into today. I'm Natalie Webster. This is Tonka Talk, where we talk about all things community and connection. And today I'm sitting down and talking with Twila Dang from Matriarch Digital Media. She's also a producer over at NPR News. She's been up to all kinds of things since we last sat and worked on a podcast, which was in your basement probably a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it's like, it was 7 years ago we started it.
When we started, no longer.
No, it was 7 years. Well, we started working together about 9 years ago. But we started the podcast in the basement like 7 years ago.
Yes.
And I was like, it's so great because I love when you tell the story and you're like, so we got put together in a podcast, but she always leaves out the part where we got matched up as partners and she got told before I got told because I was already working there and she got hired and they decided to like expand and sort of mix people up. So I'm on social media and I get this message from Natalie, whom I've never met. And she's like, oh, I'm so excited. We're going to work together. Can't wait to meet you. And I was like, what's happening? Hello? And then I called my boss and she's like, oh yeah, we found you a new radio partner. I go, I think I already met her. I think I did.
Crazy lady overreached out. Yeah. And what I love though, and why Twila will always hold a very special place in my heart. When I met Twila, when we started on this radio show, I was getting a divorce. I had not that long before left Scientology and was going through like some harassment and things that goes along with that.
Yeah.
And this is who gets paired up with her to do this show.
I think the best part about it was because I think we have this in our lore of our history together. We had like the whole first year we couldn't figure each other out. So Natalie probably thought I didn't like her. And then I'm sure Natalie, I was like, I think Natalie likes me, but I can't like get a read on her because she just seems so, every time I would show up and be like, okay, we have to work. And Natalie would just be like, life is great. Like, I'm like, life is buoyant. I'm happy to be here. You just tell me what to do. I'm rolling with the punches. And I would be like, no, we have to like concentrate and we have to like strategy and everything. And it took forever for us to figure out like how to play our position. I am an over like everything. I over prepare. I overthink. I over, enunciate everything. And Natalie is so good at just going with the flow. And she's great at reacting to that kind of energy that it took me a minute to realize like, no, they gave me the perfect person.
Yeah.
And I think the first time we sat down and actually talked about like, well, wait, what is our dynamic and how does it work?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, you can add stuff to the segment. You can produce things. And you're like, Twila, you show up for a weekend show where we only need 15 topics and you have 75. I'm pretty sure I'm comfortable letting you go wherever you want to go. You just tell me what you need me to, like, how you want me to like slot in and how you want me to react.
Yeah.
From that moment on, we figured out how to get a rhythm.
Yep.
And after that, it just got to be like fun. Like I was, in some ways, she used to say like, oh no, you make me be more professional in these settings. And then I would say the opposite. I'd be like, oh no, you help me like chill out in these settings.
Exactly. It'll loosen up a little bit more. After when we weren't doing the radio show anymore, you went on and created Matriarch Digital Media, which you immediately, after you listen to this, need to go look up matriarchdm.com. She has a bunch of shows on there. Can you talk a little bit about creating Matriarch Digital Media and what you're doing with it?
Yes. So Matriarch started on a really simple premise. I had just reached 40. I was in my early 40s, and I just kept realizing, it kept being echoed to me that women in my age group weren't treating respectfully anymore. We had sort of hit that, fun age of usefulness being like declining. And so it was like, oh, you're not as, vivacious, or you're not as attractive, or you're not as wanted in society. And I kept seeing that play out in the media that was being presented to me. All of a sudden, I was getting a lot more ads for plastic surgery, and I was being told I need to do X, Y, and Z to stay relevant with a younger audience or a younger demographic. And I just knew none of that stuff was true. I knew I felt like more self-possessed and more confident and happier in my 40s than I had in my 20s and 30s. And I didn't understand why media didn't reflect it. So all of a sudden it was like, I think I can do something about it. And I had learned all these skill sets working in radio. And I thought, and podcasting was just sort of hitting the zeitgeist. And I was like, okay, I think I'm gonna try this. I think I'm gonna try to make something here. And I lucked out, happened to say the right thing in front of the right people at the right time and got some seed money to get started. And then I called all my friends like Natalie and said, I have a crazy idea. I would like to try to make something. And if it works, we'll change the way the world talks to and about women and girls. And if it doesn't work, we'll talk about the time that we got together in my basement and blew some money. And everybody, nobody said no. And we spent a year making content in the basement before we started releasing it. And then once it got out, we just started to build on it. And here we are almost 8 years later with the company.
There's multiple shows, and the podcast that we had started together, Twila and Natalie, still on there.
Yes.
We may need to revamp.
I mean, listen.
You tell us. You're listening to this. Whether you listen to us on the radio, you follow Twila on her podcast or the work that she's doing on NPR. Would you like to see us back together doing something? We may have to figure it out.
Well, I've said before, like the beauty of what we built from day one was I wanted it to be evergreen. So whether you discovered it at the time we were making it, a year from now, 5 years down the road, it still was relevant because it was speaking to women directly in the lives that they live. And it was reinforcing two things. One, that you're wonderful and amazing exactly the way that you are. And two, if there's anything that you do want to address in your life, we want to support you in it and not have it be some sort of a requirement to be considered like a woman in full. We just didn't think it was necessary. So I think the greatest compliment that comes out of my work is people still discover it new all the time. Like I just had a colleague that I met recently, and he and his wife had gone when I say recently, within a month, and they came back to me the next time I saw them. They're like, oh my gosh, we were listening to your show with Natalie and we were arguing about this too. And we had the same debate too. And it made me so happy because I was like, we made that 6 years ago in a basement and it still has 100% relevancy today.
Wow. I need to go back and listen to that. It's Twila and Natalie if you want to look for it.
Yeah. So it's, to me, that's like the greatest compliment of our work, but it's also the thing that continues to drive me because I knew the things that we were talking about then, it was still necessary. Those conversations are still necessary now. We have young people that are coming up and discovering the brand, and it's becoming relevant and necessary for them now. And hopefully we're even catching women younger so that they can gain this confidence in themselves before they hit their 40s, before they get to retirement age. I just want everybody to understand that you have agency now and power right now. You should be using it.
Yeah. And you took it to the next level because you didn't just go and do a podcast or get a couple podcasts going. Twila created a whole community.
Yes.
A whole community, women in podcasting. We're going to talk a bit about that. Yeah. And that's the part that really fascinates me. And, on Tonka Talk, we talk a lot about how people create community, how they find connection. And through podcasting, you've been able to tell us about women in podcasting and the whole community around that.
So we started Women in Podcasting probably about 2 years into the brand itself. And it was really to address a specific need. I knew there weren't enough women working in the podcasting industry. I didn't even know it from data at that point. I just knew from the people I was interacting with. And when I was trying to find community, I just kept running into either like deeply tech dudes or like your AV nerd types, or even like a lot of public media folks, like before I got into the industry. So it felt very like above me and even slightly elitist. Like if you didn't know the technology, if you didn't know how to use certain things, if you didn't have a certain background or didn't go to school for it, it felt like it locked you out. And I just didn't want that. And I knew that women weren't there. So I just started to go, okay, listen, I know a little bit about a lot of things. I'm just going to show up and answer questions. At first, we used to do like real curriculum, like we're going to talk about this week and this week. And those were nice and people enjoyed the information. But really, I wound up spending an equal or more time answering questions. So I just said, okay, skip the middleman. I'm going to open up the floor. I said, especially during the pandemic, I only really had two things at my disposal. I had time and the ability to talk pretty well endlessly. So I got together and said, okay, I'm going to give you free time. And we used all the social media. So we used Clubhouse when it was available. We used Twitter Spaces. We used Facebook. And we would just open it up. And sometimes it'd be like 3 people. And sometimes it'd be like a few more. But then the pandemic happened. And what happened in the pandemic is all of a sudden I would open it up and go, okay, you have 2 hours of my time on a Sunday morning. And like we were watching once in Facebook where the numbers went from like 50 to 250 to 1,000 to 2,500. And it was like, wait a second, where are all these people coming from? And then we started getting like requests in the chat during the session saying like, oh, hey, I'm from Argentina. Can you slow down? You're talking a little fast for me. And so it was amazing because I knew, one, there were women out here that really want to do this and learn how to do this. And this wasn't like us going like, let's teach you how to use all the technology. 90% of the time, this was me saying to another woman, you have an idea. I really want you to go try to put it in the world. What's the idea? Like I would get so many people saying, I have a question. I'm thinking about starting a podcast someday. And I go, okay, let's back that up. What's the idea? And they would go, I go, you have something you want to talk about. And then they would just go on to explain in beautiful detail with like producer accuracy. This is the idea, how they want to execute it, what they want to say, what they want to, put out in public. And I go, so basically, you've already worked this all out. You just need the confidence or the permission to go do it. I'm giving you permission. Please go make it. And this session will hopefully give you the confidence because you can get access to like understanding what the tools are or how to get started or what's free and low cost. I just want you to go make something.
And this is free, by the way, Women in Podcasting and what she's doing and continuing to build this community. It's not like you have to pay a large sum of money and then you join this group and you have this access.
No.
She's crazy enough to just go do it for free. So take advantage of it before she comes to her senses and starts charging money.
Well, and I do try to forewarn people because on Facebook, there is a Women in Podcasting group that's like a paid community. That is not me. I have control over the trademark in the United States, but not outside of the United States. So there's a lovely woman in Canada who's built something under Women in Podcasting, and no shade to her. She's building what she's built, and what it does is great for her community up there. I'm just not interested in monetizing this. I just want this to be a free and open access tool for women. So if you're connected to myTalk, you'll always be connected to Women in Podcasting content to a degree. And I'm going to continue to try to find ways to do that.
So people can find out more about Women in Podcasting, again, by going to matriarchdm.com, Matriarch Digital Media.
Yes, and it's already spun out. Like I said, it started out with, these conversations. It's spun out into some research that we've done and some research I'm going to be doing some more of. We've gotten some more funds to do researching about women and BIPOC people in the industry. And it is now spun out to the micro grant program. We have a program called Our Greatness that is geared toward independent women of color podcasters. So they're about like up to $450. But it's essentially the thing that keeps you from, it's that first barrier to access. Like I don't have a microphone, so I can't make a podcast, or I can't afford an editing tool. I can't afford, a platform. And this, a little bit of money can get you from, I really want to try this, but I don't have this one thing, to now you have the one thing. Go try. Go make something.
Yeah. I like what you said about with the women that you come across and they have an idea and there's this large hesitation, which I think is really common. I don't think anybody suffers more from imposter syndrome than women.
Yes. And honestly, like I said, I've done the thing in my head where I've been like, oh, I think I have imposter syndrome. And then I was like, no, I don't. I just haven't decided that what the other voices outside of my head are saying are not true. I think for a long time, and I think that's the thing that gets us, is we start to have a discussion in our head that's like our internal monologue, and then we add an external monologue to that says everything from, oh, well, women can't, or I can't, or I'm not supposed to, or it doesn't work like that, or you have to pay your dues. Whatever those things are, all of that social contract stuff, it's all crap. The second you decide, I'm here, and who's going to stop me from taking a chance on myself today?
Yeah.
Nobody. Then you do. And then that's a muscle. The more you exercise it, the stronger it gets, the more you start doing stuff. I mean, heaven's sake, when you and I met, what weren't we told about our time at the radio station? We were happily like two little eager puppies in the corner, or people would pet our heads and be like, that's cute that y'all do that. But no one had any illusion of giving us an opportunity bigger than, filling the airtime and the dead airspace that they needed. Everything that came out of that was a commitment week to week of me and you just being like, screw it, we're going to try.
Yeah, we're going to try.
We're going to do something else.
We're going to do this. And I think it helped. I know it helped me because you really seemed like you knew what you were doing.
Yeah.
So it's
totally,
right.
Totally didn't, just making it up.
So it's surprising to hear that you did it. And I kind of went into it with I have absolutely nothing to lose.
Okay, see, and here's the thing. If you add like delusional confidence with a complete lack of shame, that was us.
Exactly.
And what we would do really well is I would be thinking every single solitary scenario, but I still had an external monologue that said, oh, I can't approach this person or I can't talk to this person because that's not appropriate. What's the appropriate channel? And Natalie would go, oh, we want to get this person on the show. I'm going to go on Twitter and just directly at them. And would go on Twitter and be like, you should come on our show. And then we would get a call and be like, wait, did that person said they could do our show.
Yeah.
Or she would scam us into an event. Like there'd be stuff we weren't supposed to be at. And
the Bethany Frankel event.
Listen, forever. And when I say we, that was so beautiful that we actually got ourselves in trouble at the station for it, but it was worth it. Mm-hmm. Bethany Frankel, if you have a memory, had a brief talk show, and was going around the country on tour. And she was having these little like cocktail parties / interview events. And the media list was hard to get on. And every media outlet in the city only got one person they could send. So what we didn't know at the time, I mean, at this point, we didn't think we had any shot at this. Mm-hmm. And so Natalie calls me and is like, I'm getting my nails done. And there's a guy here that's a friend of mine who says he knows somebody he thinks can get us on the list. And I'm like, go for it, girl. You get us on the list. I'll ask the questions. I got you. And so she gets us on the list. Now, what we didn't understand when she got us on the list is that essentially that took up myTalk's slot because we worked for myTalk. So while they were trying to get like their more popular and successful.
Yeah, and there were many more popular, successful shows than ours.
Everybody else. And so they're applying and they get told, oh, no, your slot's already taken. And they're like, what do you mean? And they're like, well, Twila and Natalie have they? And so, y'all, when I say everything hit the fan, all of it hits the fan. And so the thing is, nobody could be like, they were mad at us, but they couldn't be like, mad at us.
Yeah, they had to respect the hustle.
Yeah, we did get in. So then we get there and we're like, just act like you've been there. Just act like you've been there. And we got to do an interview and the interview was like super awkward.
Yeah, we got to interview Bethany.
Now, mind you, like, so the interview was awkward, but it wasn't because of us. It was just because that wasn't her bag either.
Yeah, she didn't seem like she really wanted to be doing.
No, she was.
And I don't blame her.
Yeah, it was kind of like what happens when you make a huge cash grab and all of a sudden you're stuck with the pieces that go with it. Mm-hmm. And so we were like, we'll do our interview. We were told coming in the door, just so you know, you can do your interview. It's 5 minutes, no photos, and the party is full. Nobody's getting into the party.
Yeah, you cannot go upstairs.
Yes. So
which immediately meant we were going to go upstairs.
It's even better because they were so specific. Like, don't ask for selfies. Don't ask these questions. I come in, I find like the most like polite way to ask the questions they told me not to ask, but she did answer them. We get up to leave and Natalie's like, we're going to take a selfie, which they told us specifically not to do. Did it anyway. Come up the stairs and we're supposed to you go up the stairs, you're supposed to go out the door. So either go straight out the door or you turn left and the tables are there. Now, mind you, we're hovering. Not because we're thinking like how to scam our way into the party. We're actually just trying to like figure out like how to bundle up against, and get, like go get our cars and go get out of downtown. We're literally just chatting. And this man walks up to us and goes, oh, ladies, I'm so sorry that we haven't taken care of you. Did you get your bags? Do you have your badges for upstairs? And I don't even get to answer. I turn around and Natalie goes, no, we didn't. Well, thank you so much. And because he's holding him up. And we could have said like, oh, we're not going to the party. But Natalie goes, no, we didn't. Thank you so much. And she takes them. She hands them to me.
We manifested that. That was ours.
Listen, she said, literally, we looked at each other and she just like, go up the stairs, go. So we go to this party. And I always say that was like the night, that was the catalyst because we got to that party and wound up getting access to all of these media people in the city who we never would have met. And people who wound up like coming on our show and supporting our show. People like Tony Flowdy met him that night. And he came and did our show like before he went to work for Sirius. And I think that's still one of my greatest radio compliments ever. When he sat in studio with us and told us like an hour in, he goes, y'all do this every weekend? And we're like, yeah. He goes, you talk for an hour straight, like no breaks, no music. We're like, yeah. He goes, don't let anybody tell you you're not professionals because this is hard. This is a hard thing to do. This is not easy to do.
Yeah.
And like after that, I was like totally puffy chested. It was like, okay, look, Tony said this is hard and he's been doing this forever.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think things like that kind of helped just like it was like watching our community in action.
Yeah.
Because in a lot of ways, our community showed up in ways for us that they didn't even realize they were doing.
Exactly. Do you remember his advice? We had asked him when we had him on the show. I think we were still on the air. It was at a time in my life where I had not that long before come out of Scientology that I was born and raised in, a very controlling organization.
Yeah.
Very limited, very somewhat isolated. And I just really hadn't really gotten out in the world a lot outside of that. So I'm sitting there in this interview, freshly having kind of, again, left Scientology. And she's talking about pulp culture. We have a pulp culture format. And are you okay with pulp culture and talking about pulp culture? I'm like, I love pulp culture. I'm obsessed with pop culture. I am all about pop culture. And then I went home and I Googled, what is pop culture?
Listen, some of my favorite moments on that show were when we would be talking about something we assumed everybody knew. And you'd be like, what's that?
Mm-hmm.
And we'd be like, Natalie, you don't know that movie? You don't know that TV show? And she'd be like, and then like, what I loved is that we got to a comfort level where you would just go, cult, remember? And we'd be like, yeah,
that's right.
Okay.
There was a period of time when in my teen years, when I was in what's called the C organization, you're not allowed to watch television, read newspapers, have a TV. So there's a lot of the things that my peers learned about, went through, and that was a period of time where I didn't have access to that pop culture.
Yeah, but I mean, I always say in the course of the time we knew each other in the early days, and even now, honestly, even to this very day, the thing that I admire most about what you do and how you do it is that you've always had this sense of joy around it. And I remember asking you about it because I remember being like, I just don't understand how you can just be like happy in the day-to-day this way. And you said, well, they stole enough of my joy, they can't have another minute of it.
That's exactly it.
And I mean, after that, I think even that helped me be like, okay, you don't this isn't digging ditches. Like we literally show up and we talk nonsense for 2 hours and
got paid to do it.
And got paid to do it. And that there's you can, I mean, to some degree, it informed how I wound up thinking about the way I wanted to build the brand. Now, because I'm me, of course, the first execution of the brand was super you have to take this seriously. But there was... there's as time has gone on, we've gotten a real understanding of an underpinning. And the underpinning is I want people to have joy. I want women to understand that they're allowed to enjoy their life, but, and I don't, like I said, I don't, as an American and as a Black woman, I was always sort of in the responsibility first mode. I have a responsibility to the voice of the public or to the audience that I'm serving. And I really had to go back and go, okay, what were the things that I would do in this space that would bring joy? What were that's why the first show we built had to be your show, had to be the show with us together, because I knew that was going to set the tone. And to this day, when people hear the show, they understand two things very clearly. One, we are perfectly comfortable being ourselves. Yeah. And two, there is real levity and joy and happiness that infuses the way we talk about being women. Yeah. And I was like, if I can make that the bedrock of how we make every show, if I can make that the bedrock of what it feels like when you're interacting with the brand, we'll be doing something really right, because women will feel safe being vulnerable here, being happy here, just being themselves here.
And being able to share. And that's what I loved about when you went and created Matriarch Digital Media, was it gave these women and continues to this voice and this platform. But it's kind of like what we went through when we were doing radio and getting comfortable with ourselves and just being okay. And again, where I was coming from, we're trying to figure out, I don't even know what the social contracts were in society to a degree. And it was, I never felt judged about it at all. Even when there's something that I wouldn't know, it became so much fun because Twila would give me homework. Okay.
I'd be like, this week you're going to go watch episodes of this show.
Yeah, exactly.
Or I'm going to make you go watch this new movie.
To find out what happened about it. And then even when it would come up, we would talk about Scientology. It wasn't a primary subject of our show by any means. It was something that's kind of when I think I really realized that the more I spoke about it, the better I felt about it, the more I could process it. Because my experience for me was a lot about not recognizing how strange, bizarre, wrong, and abusive a lot of things that happened. So they would come up in conversation and I would be very nonchalant about it because for me, that was what my normal was.
Yeah. And then we'd all be like, what?
What?
wait. And I used to do this thing on the show, and I still do it in real life, where I'll go, sidebar, we need to talk about this for a second. Or sometimes I would we had a good enough shorthand where I would know if we were allowed to talk about it on air or not. And I'd be like, okay, we'll talk about that later. We'll be like, okay, sidebar, we're going to talk, we'll pick that up later.
Exactly.
Whatever it is.
Something that I kind of needed to process. And it was a unique, I think, situation to be in, to be able to process my cult experience in part on this show and
in a public forum,
in a public way.
But I think it taught both of us a lot about how to navigate difficult conversations and vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
And I think as a producer, because ultimately what I didn't realize at the time was I was learning to be a producer in real time. It taught me a lot about how to create the structure of safety around conversations that are vulnerable.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is I was the inspiration for Patriarch Digital Media.
I mean, I'm not gonna say the answer is no to that, because a lot of what even when we started to build it, remember when we said we were sit down to make a show, and it was like, okay, we can't do what we were doing on the radio.
Yeah.
And then we kind of said, you know what, though? That wasn't even the most fun we had. The most fun we would have at the station is showing up an hour before the show would start and downloading our lives together. But we were told, don't talk about that kind of stuff on the radio. Nobody cares about that. They care about the celebrities, not y'all. And so we immediately shifted and said, okay, we're going to talk about ourselves in this setting. And at that point, we had enough rapport. We knew the ground rules of how to structure a conversation. We knew what our personal boundaries are, and what we talk about and what we don't talk about.
Yeah.
And so the very first time we turned the microphone on, that was super easy. It was much, I went back and listened to it recently and thought to myself, oh, this probably won't hold up. It'll probably feel a little clunky. It didn't feel clunky at all.
Yeah.
It felt it hit the goal I always had, which was, if we make something, I want anybody in front of a mic for us to feel 100% themselves, as comfortable as possible. And I want you to feel like you happen, as a listener, I want you to feel like you just happen to pull up a chair at the most fun or interesting conversation that was going on, and they just happen to be totally cool with you sitting down with them to have talk.
Yeah, and that's really how it was. And when we were doing Twila and Natalie, the podcast together, we treated it just like when we were on air. That was live.
Yes.
Other than being able to hit a button if somebody swore, there was no editing. So
I still don't. I still do things live to tape.
Yeah, which is amazing.
Yeah.
But when we were recording the podcast, the agreement in the rule was that this is our authentic conversation, and there's no taking anything out other than editing for sound and then having an intro outro.
Now, I will say I have evolved a little bit from there. I think because it was me and you, and we were just we always knew where the boundary walls were for us.
Mm-hmm.
As we brought more people in, as we started to work with other people, as we started working with guests and clients, one of the things I'm really, really passionate about is making sure that you feel 100% comfortable with the way you're presented in the space when you're with us.
Mm-hmm.
So I assure you, as much as I can in the beginning, thank you so much for being here. If at any point you say something that makes you feel uncomfortable and you just don't want it included, tell me, we'll remove it. Mm-hmm. If you get overwhelmed during the recording process, or you feel it's a little too close to the bone, please tell us. We'll take a break. We'll stop. We'll reset. We'll move on.
Don't you wish we could do that in real life? What if in real life you're having a difficult situation, you say some just asinine stupid,
and you're like, can you please just take that out of the edit?
Can you just edit that out?
Can you move on and just move that from the edit? I mean, that has been it's one of the things I feel like I learned so specifically from the time we spent together, mostly because there were times there were lessons I had to learn. And I think you and I definitely did a lot of that practice ground together, where one of my main tenets, and when I have clients, is teaching them that your story is not always your own. So the idea that when you tell a story, it should be centered on you. You should be the protagonist, antagonist, butt of the joke. It should be you. If it's anybody else, that story doesn't just belong to you, and you need to vet it properly. Mm. And it was one of those things that we always did when we would tell stories. It would always be we're the butt of the joke.
Exactly. Unless it was, sometimes a few things about my kids would get in there. But what I learned to do, because I have 3 children and now they're all adults, is not say which one.
Yes. See, and I took it a step further because I had children that were minors. So I would obscure all of the detail, but I would also vet it with my husband before I put stuff out there. I'd be like, okay, can I tell that story? And then sometimes he'd be like, no, you can't tell that story. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes he'd be like, oh yeah, that's innocuous. That's fine. Go ahead, tell that story.
The whole experience was, I think, a big lesson in, I was creating a new community. I was finding my way outside of Scientology and in the world, and you were finding these ways to help, what ended up being helping other people create their communities and building it all up.
Well, I think the fundamental is we learned how to be in community in a new way and in a new space. And once we learned how to be in community in that space, we developed, like not just a skill set, but a confidence in being able to take those things and go create things in other places.
Yeah.
And I will always be grateful for that experience, because it's the thing that gave us both the confidence to go, okay, I can do anything. I can go out here and try this. I can go talk to these people. I can go start this. I mean, we both started countless, ventures, public ventures, private ventures. And the core tenet is still the same. The same thing that got us that job years ago is the same thing that works today. We're both completely comfortable going into new spaces and just talking to people.
Yeah.
And it's an incalculable skill. And, I said, my mom jokes every once in a while, she'll call me and be like, I can't believe you get paid to talk stuff for a living. And I'm like, I know it's a pretty good life. It's a pretty good life.
Yeah. So if you're that person, you're out there and you're passionate about something you want to share, and, whatever it is, if you want to do a podcast, create a community that way, reach out to Twila through Matriarch Digital Media. Again, go to matriarchdm.com. You can see the other podcasts. Twila and Natalie, the podcast we were doing, is on there.
Yes, it is.
You can learn more about women in podcasting. You can connect with that community.
Yeah, we have a production house too. So we make custom audio, custom podcasts, custom content for clients, from idea iteration all the way to finished project. We do audio, we do video, we do a la carte services. So if you want to make something, you just don't even know where to start, you can come talk to us. We'll help you.
I love that. That's amazing. Well, we are definitely going to have to talk about something again. So I know we'll have Twila back. We'll share more about what's going on too. I'm going to get more involved with women in podcasting and just pick her brain for all kinds of things, and share with me too what you want to hear about on Tonka Talk. We share the different ways people create community and connection all over. So I want to hear how you're doing that, or what you'd like to hear more about. What would help you to be able to create these communities more, or get more connected in your community? So Twila, thank you so much.
No, you never have to thank me. I'm so proud of you. Anything you need, anytime you need it, just call me.
I appreciate that. Everybody else, I will talk to you later.